Hello, everyone. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official Marvel Snap Zone podcast, and today we're going to go over 5 new Silver Surfer decks that are taking over the meta. What we had a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago even, was a meta that was dominated by Darkhawk Good Stuff decks. Surfer decks are now in a place where they can compete at the very, very top of the meta with those Zabu, Darkhawk, Legion, Good Stuff decks. So I'm really excited to see Surfer get to that point. I'm going to try and prove to you with these 5 different decks that you can play that Surfer is right here at the top of the meta. This video is inspired by Den, the head writer over at Marvel Snap Zone, and a friend, phenomenal coach, general all-around great dude. He asked, are we about to enter Silver Surfer era number 2 in Marvel Snap? And shares a deck. We'll talk about that deck later. But what's important to note here is Silver Surfer era number 1 was like January, February, where during the Zabu meta and the month after Surfer was released, it was the best deck in the game. Pre-nerf Surfer, 3-0 gives everything +3. There might be enough new 3-cost cards, enough new powerful 3-cost cards that we are about to enter the second meta of Silver Surfer's dominance. Before we talk about that, though, I'm going to ask you to subscribe, ring that notification bell, like, sub, do all the stuff. It really helps us out. We appreciate your help, and in return for your helping us grow and become a more prominent channel, we're doing our best here. We bring you at least 2 decks every single weekday that are new, different, ahead of the meta. Decks you will not find on other people's channels. Decks that can help you get infinite. Decks that have different cards that let you snap better, let you surprise your opponents for extra cubes. Gets you infinite, gets you your infinity borders, it helps you reach all your goals in Marvel Snap. But you gotta sub, and if you want to help us, ring that bell, like, comment. We'd really, really appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the first deck. Let's actually not talk about the first deck. Yesterday, afternoon's video, Dara released this Dakin Surfin deck. I played this deck to a 70% win rate. Dara went undefeated from Proving Grounds. I always want to say Battlegrounds. Proving Grounds all the way up to an infinity ticket with this deck. That's 6-0. Think about how hard it is to get that infinity border. Dara basically did that in the hardest server in the world with this deck. It's really good. It's worth playing. I'm not going to break it down because we talked about it already in yesterday's video. So make sure you check that out if you have interest. We are still talking about 5 other decks, though. The first of these decks is Den's own Silver Surfer. This is a classic build of the deck that literally makes one real change. It says, I'm not running Maximus anymore. Now, instead of Maximus, I am running Spider-Man. Spider-Man has 2 less stats, but a really good ability. It works usually in a Storm lane as a second Juggernaut, so that now you have 2 ways to basically lock up that Storm lane. It's really, really good against the Good Stuff builds, because Goose can do an absolutely phenomenal job. If they don't see their Zabu of just winning a lane, you can almost certainly go over them in a lane that you have Goose in if they don't see Zabu. And if they do see Zabu, you have Rogue for their Darkhawk anyway. Killmonger handles little stuff. Killmonger and Nova act almost as like a mini Surfer for games you don't see Surfer. Polaris remains a really good card in just helping to control the board and adding a fair amount of power. And Brood is the big power card of the deck. That is a 3 once you Surfer for 12, which is a premium stat line. And finally, we have Shadow King, who is not as meta as he was, but just wins games. He's very, very surprising right now. A lot of opponents are doing just Kitty and Angela as a package. Shadow King answers that, right? Shadow King does an amazing job of answering opponent Novas. Shadow King does a really, really great job of shutting down a Taskmaster, making Apocalypse manageable, bringing Daken down to size. Whatever you need, Shadow King does. He's almost like, not like a Shang-Chi, but like he's the closest thing this deck does to running a Shang-Chi. If you don't like him, re-add Maximus and you'll be just fine. But this deck is still like running basically a control shell, and then with just enough power thanks to the Surfer and Nova package to get over the top. This is the most basic list we're going to look at, but hey, I checked out how this deck has done, and in the past like day, it's got over 300 games, and it's got a 67% win rate, which is absolutely humongous. You should definitely try this deck out. Also, thing of note, you know what you don't see in this deck? Any Series 4 or 5 cards. So you can, if you're in Series 3, build this deck. If you need some replacements, even so, if you're still in the middle of Series 3, let me know in the comments. Outside of Surfer, Brood, and Sarah, I think everything is at least a bit replaceable. Next up, we have Explodium. Explodium Gaming is a friend of ours who hit Infinite in like 4 hours with this Surfer list. This is a different list. This one has a Season Pass card and a Series 4 card. The Series 4 card is not terribly important, to be completely transparent with you. I like this deck in that it takes advantage of Daken as an extra win condition. Daken can steal a lane all by himself in this deck, and that 3/8 power, especially when pumped by Surfer at the end of the game, is game winning. You've got your Storm and Juggernaut as an easy way to steal a lane, lock down a lane. Cosmo auto wins you certain games, although be careful if you think your opponent is running a deck with Cosmo because you don't want to leave yourself nowhere to Surfer. Brood is, again, your big power play, but this deck has 3 big power plays. It's got Daken, who is very often a 3/10, Maximus, who is very often a 3/9, and Brood, who is very often a 3/12. If you get 2 of those in a lane, right, that's premium power, top of the game power, and win against like anything but Shuri Red Skull levels of power. Mirage is a nice power boost. The beauty of running Colleen as a way to trigger Daken along with Killmonger is that Colleen as a Colleen as a 2/4 is also just a premium stat line. 4 is a lot of stats for a 2-drop, and getting that is really, really great. Also really notable for curve purposes. What you'd like to do is you'd like to Daken on 3 and then play that shard, assuming you have a safe place, along with another card on 4. That is one playline, and the other playline is usually playing Storm and Juggernaut. So you're deciding based on matchup, based on what you've got in hand, which of those 2 you want to do. But this is like the premium stats version of Surfer. You need to play it to believe how much stats this pumps out. Again, this hit Infinite in like 4 hours. This is a legitimately great deck. Next up, we have KrakenNull. KrakenNull grabbed Infinity Tick. He's grabbed more than one by now. With this deck, KrakenNull is, everyone knows Molt, right? If you're watching this, you probably know who Molt is. Molt is considered the move master of all of Marvel Snap. He's an excellent player, excellent person. He's been on the Snap Justice podcast, which you can find on the Marvel Snaps on YouTube if you'd like to see us talk with Molt, although it's about a month old at this point. This KrakenNull is every bit the move player Molt is. Every single season, KrakenNull plays. Took a little break for a month. But every single season KrakenNull plays, he hits Infinite with move. When move was terrible, he hit Infinite with move. Well, now he has the most dedicated move Surfer I've ever seen, and he's printing Infinity tickets with it. This deck is completely different than the previous 2, and part of the reason I think that Surfer is so very good right now. What you're basically trying to do is control where your opponents can play, using cards like Juggernaut and Storm and Spider-Man. That's a way to win a lane. You'd really, really like that to be the right lane if possible. Doesn't have to be, but it's nice if it is. You can also use Cloak if like you're winning that lane. If they choose not to contest that lane, you can use Cloak to get one of your cards out of there for an extra power boost elsewhere. Your key card here is very often going to be Vulture. Vulture gets absolutely huge in this deck. Vulture is like a turn 2 of Iron Fist into a turn 3 Vulture, into a turn 4 Ghost Spider, into Doctor Strange, and now you've got like a 20 power Vulture sitting there. And now you're just trying to figure out how to win another lane. Well, luckily, your Miles Morales now costs 1, right? So Miles Morales and Brood with a Surfer at the end of the game, right? Miles Morales on a turn, then a regular 3-drop. Then Brood and Surfer on the last turn. You've got 12 and 5. You've got 17 power coming out of nowhere from a lane that basically had nothing the turn before. This deck is super cool. Vulture is game-winning. Vulture is back-breaking in this deck. The control of Spider-Man and Juggernaut are phenomenal. Doctor Strange allows you to and Cloak and Ghost Spider and Iron Fist allow you to reposition, and opponents are going to struggle so much to play against this deck. This is a very cool deck. I really like KrakenNull list. If you've been having trouble using Move, I suggest you use a KrakenNull list. I think his are very straightforward and like work really, really well. He's why I've been convinced that like even when everyone's like Move isn't good, Move isn't good, I think Move is good and we're just kind of bad at it because KrakenNull is brilliant at these decks. TheCounterGuy, another awesome streamer. Hey, CounterGuy. Got 3 gold tickets back to back to back with this on stream. With this surfer list, which means 3 straight wins, 3 times, with which means 9 straight wins. With this surfer list, this deck is featured here for 2 reasons. I think it does 2 really, really, really cool things. So after Storm, if you drop Kingpin and then you have Juggernaut and Spider-Man for the end of the game, you're going to kill some stuff because they're not filling that Storm lane, right? Like, you're going to get some stuff. Maybe you're killing your Spider-Man, maybe not, but, like, you've got a lot of power for the end of the game at that point. The other major difference, you can also obviously just play Kingpin in the lane that they're not inclined to play in, like, not Subterranean. I can't think of the name of the location, but the one that puts either Vibranium or rocks in your deck, like, people are generally not inclined to play. If you can land your Kingpin in Danger Room, people are not inclined to play there. And then at the end of the game, you can drag stuff over with like Polaris, play a Juggernaut, plays Polaris, or a Spider-Man and Juggernaut, etc. That combo of 3 cards to, destroy their game plan, like absolutely destroy them. You're killing their cards in a way that they were not predicting and thought were safe from, and then they're just dead. The other reason that this deck is here is this is the one deck here that's running Spider-Ham, and I think Spider-Ham is super well positioned in the meta right now. A lot of people are still testing out Daken, which means that they're playing things like Apocalypse and MODOK, and Spider-Ham is the single strongest card in the game against discard, I think, because if it hits Apocalypse, the game is basically over. If it hits MODOK, they don't have the discard, the game is basically over. Spider-Ham is phenomenal for that part of the meta. And then Spider-Ham is also phenomenal because a lot of these same decks, Daken decks are running cards like Death and Null. And if you can get a Spider-Ham down early, you can trap Death in hand at a 7 cost, 8 cost, and you can stop a Null before Null has a chance to get more than 2 or 3 power. It's a phenomenal card in the meta and a very worth playing one. The last deck we're going to talk about, I call this Paper's Mental Takedown, because I don't know if you listened to the Snap Judgments from last week. It's still the most recent episode. We recorded last night with Eggs and Savage Yeti. That'll be live tomorrow. But Paper's Mental Takedown is such a great deck. All he did on the episode he was talking about was tell us how bad Surfer was. I talk to him all the time, and all he does is go, I don't like Surfer, I don't like Surfer, I don't like Surfer. Well, Daken changed his mind. Daken gives Surfer a second win condition, and this deck does an absolutely phenomenal job of taking advantage of it. You have multiple curves. I love the Absorbing Man in this deck. The Surfer that I've been playing, that Daria deck, runs Absorbing Man. What you can basically do with this deck, you have 3 different Absorbing Man lines, right? If you get Magic out, you can Surfer and Absorbing Man on the last turn of the game. You can also go 3-4 Brood into Absorbing Man and have a 15 power lane with Absorbing Man along with that Brood who's going to become a 12. And you can just go Daken into Absorbing Man, and then you've got 2 shards, which you're going to have to get rid of with Killmonger. I'm going to tell you straight up, the easiest switch for Jeff, this is the only deck I think I'm featuring today with Jeff, who's one of the best cards in the game in every freaking deck. I think that could just be Colleen as a way to get rid of a shard. You can also conceivably run Carnage, because Carnage is just a good card, and it's an extra way to get rid of Nova if you don't see that Killmonger. Everything else about this deck is fairly chalk. You understand the gist by now. One other play is if you have 2 bad locations, you can always Storm and Absorbing Man. That's like, it's not my favorite play with this deck, but like you can Storm and Absorbing Man, and very often that'll really help you win a game. If you keep Jeff in the deck, you can even then use Jeff in that Storm lane to still pull off that Storm lane as a way to win. While then you Absorb Man, you've got 5 there, and then you can play a Daken or whatever, Polaris, into that Absorbing Man lane the next turn, and you can lock up 2 lanes by the last turn, at which point, like, your Surfer, Shadow King, Daken, etc., all have like even if you're just Brood Surfering, right? Like you've got a lot of power and a lot of optionality going into the last turn of the game. Decks are really, really good. They're really strong. And Surfer is super versatile. We just looked at 5 totally different Surfer builds. There's certain keys to all of them. Hopefully you can tell by this list the cards you really, really need to run Surfer. You're going to need, for modern Surfer, Storm, Juggernaut, and Brood. You have Storm already, because you hopefully, if you're watching this completed series 2, I want to say series 1, wherever the hell Storm shows up, she's not a series 3 card, and Killmonger is a series 2 card. So you've got the 2 cards that are in every deck, Storm and Killmonger. So you need Surfer, Brood, and Juggernaut, and then you can make this archetype work at a tier 1 level, a level that competes with the best decks in the game almost no matter what once you're at least a bit of the ways into series 3. Surfer, Silver Surfer, is a premium deck. Welcome to tier 1. Welcome to Surfer Meta 2.0. See you tomorrow with another deck. Peace.